When traveling from a point to a destination, you can easily calculate the remaining duration of your trip by dividing the remaining distance by your average speed. Similarly, Agile teams forecast the remaining project duration by dividing the total size of the remaining work by their velocity. Velocity measures the rate at which work is completed within a predefined interval. For Scrum teams, velocity measures the amount of work that can be completed during a single sprint. For example, if the Scrum team completes user stories worth a total of 4 story points in the first sprint, the team velocity would be 4 story points per iteration. Note that the velocity should be in the same units as the PBIs. If the team is using ideal days to size PBIs, the velocity would be reported in ideal days per iteration. Velocity measures what has been delivered and thus does not include partially completed PBIs. In the first iteration, if a Scrum team completes PBIs that are worth 4 story points in total and partially completes a PBI that is worth 2 story points, the team velocity would still be 4 story points per iteration. Velocity is an important metric in planning how much work the team will commit to in the next iteration and in forecasting the project schedule and budget. If an Agile team completed 5 story points in the first iteration, the team can commit to completing user stories worth 5 story points in the next iteration. If team members want to estimate the remaining project duration using velocity, they can do so by dividing the remaining total story points by the velocity. For example, if there are 20 story points remaining in the project and the velocity is 4 story points per iteration, we can estimate that the team needs 5 more iterations to finish the project. We can also estimate the remaining project costs by multiplying the number of remaining iterations with the average cost per iteration. In this example, if the average cost per iteration is $20,000, we would forecast remaining costs at $100,000. When planning the project, the Agile teams use actual velocity value instead of estimated value. Only a newly formed team that has no historical data would need to estimate a velocity to plan how much work they can complete within the first iteration. As the first iteration is complete, the team replans the project by using its actual velocity in the first iteration. After completing a few iterations, the team establishes a more reliable velocity rate that can be used to make more accurate forecasts. Agile teams frequently replan the project and revise the schedule and budget forecasts based on up-to-date data. Planning future work by using a velocity range can be more beneficial than using a single velocity value, as it provides more flexibility to deal with uncertainties. Consider the following velocity chart, which shows the number of story points a team completed in the past 6 iterations. A velocity chart is a bar chart that shows the amount of work completed per each predefined interval, such as an iteration. From this velocity chart, we see that the maximum velocity of the team was 22 story points per iteration, which was in iteration 4, while the minimum velocity of the team was 14 story points per iteration in iteration 1. The average velocity is 18 story points per iteration. Based on these values, we can estimate the product release date by using a velocity range of 16 to 20 story points per iteration. If there are 80 story points remaining to the product release, we can estimate the number of iterations remaining for the product release based on 2 velocity values as follows. 80 story points divided by 20 story points per iteration equals 4 iterations, and 80 story points divided by 16 story points per iteration equals 5 iterations. With these results, we can predict that the team will need to perform 4 or 5 iterations before product release. Lastly, let's take a look at the ultimate tips for exam success. On the exam, any answer choice suggesting you make strict or detailed plans in an Agile project will be incorrect. Agile teams create plans and forecast the project schedule and budget while frequently updating those plans based on the latest project conditions and information. Some questions may require simple velocity calculations. In addition to forecasting the project schedule and budget, velocity is also used to plan how much work the team will commit to in the next iteration. Agile teams do not use an estimated velocity rate to plan for the future. Instead, they use actual velocity rates. Due to lack of historical data, a newly formed Agile team will need to estimate a velocity only to plan how much work they can complete within the first iteration. Velocity measures delivered work and thus does not include partially completed PBIs. Estimating future work with a velocity range provides more flexibility to deal with uncertainties.